I'm Primal Piggy. Thank you for joining me for another in our Identities and Roles in the BDSM Lifestyle series. Today is part two: Power Exchange Dynamics and Their Identities. Power exchange is where one person gives the other a certain amount of control over them and the relationship. Some level of power exchange happens in every relationship, both vanilla and BDSM. This has nothing to do with kink or their roles in the bedroom or in kinky play scenes. This should be discussed and agreed upon before starting the relationship. Just a disclaimer: a lot of the research that we've done was older articles and different resources where it wasn't always inclusive with gender and or sexuality. So if we tend to show a more heteronormative examples within this series, please substitute or inject your personal relationships and the types of genders that are involved and sexualities involved in your relationships into this material. Thanks. Let's look at the vanilla side. Persons within a vanilla relationship are equals. Both parties have a say so in decisions concerning where they live, big item purchases, chores, etc. They can switch it up by one handling certain jobs because it's more convenient for them. A female led relationship, FLR, a female empowering relationship. The female, or the one in charge, if it's a lesbian couple, makes all decisions, makes sure all the chores are completed, the bills are paid, and the couple's and the and is in charge of the couple's social life with others. Kink is also not necessarily a driving force in a female led relationship. A male led relationship, MLR, or often called taken in hand, sometimes is domestic discipline or a 1950s household. These are all words that are associated with male led relationships. The one in control makes the money, controls where and how it's spent. The list would be left for the partner that has stayed home and would have things like chores done and dinner at a certain time, much like the 1950s Leave It to Beaver kind of household. As well, kink is not a major driving force in this type of relationship. Let's look at the more BDSM side of relationship dynamics. First, let's look at total power exchange, TPE, also called authority transfer. A master or a mistress has complete control over their slave. This is considered the more extreme dynamic within the BDSM lifestyle. It doesn't mean it's better, it just means that it's more involved, or there is more involved in this type of power exchange. This isn't something that someone jumps right into. It takes a lot of time and growth to become a total power exchange. Oh, on the other hand, there are power exchange relationships. This is a DS Dom sub, DDLG, which is Daddy Dom little girl, or some other slash like a mommy little boy caregiver little. There's is a negotiated or limited amount of power exchange. A lot of the dynamics reserve the rights to negotiate the limits, the rules, and the punishments. There are basically two identities within the BDSM lifestyle. And those two different identities will oftentimes have a lot of different honorifics or titles associated with them. They are dominant and submissive. The dominant is the one in control, and the submissive, the one being controlled. A dominant is the umbrella identity for the person in control of their relationship and their partner on some level in the BDSM lifestyle. The dominant takes on the responsibility for the well being, the proper training, and the guidance of the submissive. A submissive is the umbrella term or umbrella identity for the person who has consensually given over some level of control or authority to their dominant. They are obedient and compliant to their partner. They always conduct themselves, or should, in a respectful manner, recognizing their behavior is a direct reflection of their dominant. Here's a list of the different types of dominants and submissives, those honorifics we were talking about, and a little bit of explanation about them. A master or mistress. And those are gender specific terms for the same identity. A type of dominant that has ultimate control or total authority over their slaves. They usually seek a total power exchange or authority exchange dynamic. A slave, a type of submissive who gives total power to their master. They are sometimes considered a possession and not a partner, but they still ultimately are a person. They might speak or type online in the third person, and they are uh, totally consensual within this type of identity. In other words, it is a consensual, ethical slave. They're not kidnapped or anything like that. An owner is similar to a master. They are the owner of a slave that identifies as like a pet or a service slave, not confused with animal play, which is a different kind of kink. And a pet, a non sexual slave that does not have any animal traits. They are sometimes referred to as an object, not a person. This is not a commonly used definition of this identity since pet or animal role play has taken over this word, kind of a blast from the past. A dom or dame, and those are both gender specific terms for the same thing, is a person in control of a DS dom sub relationship and a submissive. A sub, which is short for submissive, is the person giving up control to their partner in a DS dom sub relationship dynamic. A daddy or a mommy, sometimes referred to as a daddy dom or a mommy dom. It's a dominant that's protective, nurturing, and supportive, much like a parent, hence the name. This is not something or someone that's into any kind of incest or pedophilia. Those things fall outside of the scope of BDSM, and they're not any way, shape, or form involved in any way in BDSM, because BDSM is all about consent and all about adults. This dynamic may have less power exchange than others depending on the dynamic. Caregiver. A caregiver can be a big, which is a submissive or a non gendered alternative for a daddy or a mommy. This person usually makes sure the little is taken care of, is taking care of themselves with their meds, eating, drinking properly. Littles, a submissive that has the characteristics, behaviors, and mindset of someone younger or childlike. It has nothing necessarily to do with age play or age regression. Depending on some behaviors, littles might identify as middles, bigs, baby girl, or boy. Korean is part of the BDSM lifestyle that originated from the science fiction writer John Normal. It is an MS relationship based on servitude and slavery. Most of the time, it follows old traditional gender roles with the women serving the men as master. It's changed some, and there are practicing masters that are female, femme, non binary, and with male or non binary slaves. We just wanted to note that in doing research for this, in more than one article, it stated that those who follow a Korean lifestyle don't always claim the BDSM lifestyle. But we wanted to include these things on this list to make it a more complete list. A Korean master, a master that follows the rituals and practices created within the fictional world of Gore, which is a fantasy and adventure novel by John Norman. A Kajira, which is female, or Kanjiras, which is male, which is the slave to a Korean master. A key holder, and someone in chastity is not technically an identity, but there is a level of power exchange involved. It's not really a role either because they're not role playing chastity. A key holder, someone that holds the key to a chastity belt or cage. There does not need to be a relationship or a power exchange dynamic or any other power exchange involved for them to practice. So in some ways, it's a more of a kink role and than an identity for some. Chastity or locked is the person wearing a chastity device that trusts someone to hold the key. A switch. This is a person that can be the dominant person in one dynamic and the submissive person in another dynamic. Being both identities in the same dynamic really isn't a possibility. And it would be very counterproductive, unhealthy because of the always changing inconsistency of your mindset. Usually, this is confused with someone that identifies one way in their dynamic, but can be versatile in a scene or can is a dominant and then is in identity and then is a bottom in a kinky play scene. And so sometimes a little bit of confusion there. I'm Primal Piggy. Thank you for joining me for this BDSM United podcast, the second in this series. You can find all of our resources at www.bdsmunited.com. We encourage you to connect with us and to visit our different socials and our different pages and utilize our resources. It was a joy talking with you, and I'll talk with you again soon.